When having the greatest ever running back conversation, we all know the obvious choices, but someone who doesn't get talked about nearly enough is Curtis Martin. Unfortunately for us, Martin doesn't get nearly as much love as he should. The tailback was one of the best and most efficient backs in the NFL for over a decade. Let's talk about him and give him the love that he deserves. Curtis James Martin Jr. was born on May 1st of 1973 and eventually grew up in Point Breeze. Martin's father struggled with drugs and alcohol in his early years, which caused him to move to Point Breeze and various other parts of Pittsburgh. Unfortunately, the tragedies wouldn't stop there. His grandmother would be found murdered with a knife still in her chest. Yet again, Curtis Jr. would find himself in a bad situation. When he hit the age 15, he had a loaded gun pointed at his head, shot 7 times, but luckily the gun never went off. Junior's mom had urged him to take part in extracurricular activities at school to keep him away from all the drugs and violence. Martin would play basketball in his sophomore year, but wouldn't play anything in his junior year. Martin would also start playing the game of football in his senior year, despite not even caring for the game. He would explode onto the scene, being deemed a natural star, not only at the running back position, but also at the linebacker position as well. In his lone season, he would have over 1,700 rushing yards and 20 touchdowns as well. Not many offers were available for him at the time, but he only played one season. We have to remember this. One of those offers would come from close to home, the University of Pittsburgh, where Martin would take his talents. Curtis was definitely a stud, there's no debating that, but once he got to the college level, injuries and other things started to really derail his early and even later college years. So unfortunately for us, we never got to see the full extent of Martin's full 4 years in college. In his freshman year of school, he would develop his ability to pass catch, so whilst only rushing for 556 yards, he would be able to rack up another just under 200 yards receiving, and he would have 2 touchdowns combined. In his sophomore year of college, he would take a step forward, becoming more lethal in not just the rushing game, but also the passing. He would combine for just over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. Once again, in the next season, he would follow his trend of moving forward, this time breaking the 1,000 yards rush mark and adding around 250 receiving yards as well. He would combine for 8 touchdowns total. His season could have been even better if not for a sprained shoulder that kept him out of the last 2 weeks. In his senior season, Martin looked like he was headed for the best season of his collegiate career, having 251 rushing yards and a touchdown on opening day. Unfortunately, the following week, he would sprain his ankle, keeping him sidelined for the rest of the season. Martin will follow a long line of great Pitt running back names such as Tony Dorsett, Elliott Walker, Kervin Richards, and Craig Hayward. Anyways, Martin would declare for the NFL draft after his senior season where he would have a good combine, being nearly 6 foot tall and a little over 200 pounds. Martin was small but deadly. Martin was an elusive back. Being that small, he didn't really have much of a choice. Due to his small stature and injury past, his draft stock would drop him all the way to the 3rd round, where New England would draft him with the 74th overall pick. Martin had absolutely 0 struggles onto the next level. Once he reached the NFL, he made everybody already regret not taking him in the 1st or 2nd round. Like, literally everybody regretted not taking Martin early on, and he made them all pay for it. Martin would dominate the NFL with his nearly 1,500 rushing yards in just his rookie season. He would also carry over his receiving ability and have 261 receiving yards. His total would wind up being 1,748 scrimmage yards and 15 total touchdowns. He would wind up being elected to a Pro Bowl and win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Despite the Patriots not winning much, going 6-10, they would win big with their rookie. The highlight game of his rookie season would come in a Week 10 matchup against his rival New York Jets, foreshadowing, where he would have 166 rushing yards, 22 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. Just a week later, he would quite literally repeat his production with just 1 less yard. In Martin's 2nd season, while he wouldn't sustain the rushing yards, he would have more touchdowns due to him stepping up in the receiving area of the game. He would yet again be elected to a Pro Bowl. New England would take a step forward with an 11-5 record, but despite Martin and Bledsoe, they would still come up short, losing in the Super Bowl to the Brett Favre-led Green Bay Packers. Martin would play quite solidly in his 3 playoff games, having a little over 300 scrimmage yards. In their wildcard game of this run, Curtis would record 166 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns, which was the most in franchise history, and would have a 78-yard rushing touchdown, which would be 2nd longest ever at that point. This would mark not only his first ever Super Bowl appearance, but also his last one. Martin would have another really solid year in his 3rd year, having a combined total of 1,456 total yards, but would take a huge step back in the touchdowns portion of the game, having only 5 total. While the Patriots would go 10-6 and secure themselves a playoff spot, Martin would unfortunately have to watch from the sidelines as he had suffered an injury. What it was, I don't really know because I can't find it, but this injury came in Week 14, so he would be sidelined for the rest of the season, missing all 3 games. This is where the shaking up of Martin's career would begin. While in all technicalities, this isn't considered a trade, he would wind up on the Jets. Let me explain just a little bit. At the time, he was considered a restricted free agent. So while he could sign with any team if he decided to, the Patriots had first rights and could match whatever contract was offered. The Jets would sign him for 6 years, $36 million, in which the Patriots could have matched if they wanted to, but they didn't. But because of the structure of the contract, the Patriots declining to match means that they would get the New York Jets' first and third round picks. It's a lot to explain, and if you don't understand, I'm sorry, I'm a bad teacher, but I barely understand myself, as you can tell. Either way, at the end of the day, Martin would have a big new contract and would be wearing a different jersey while the Patriots got draft capital. Now, finally, after all this, Martin would finally get his new home, and he would become a New York Jet. And boy, did it work out for the Jets. He would have over nearly 1,600 total yards and 9 touchdowns. He was just incredible. His highlight game of his first year with the Jets would come in a Week 11 matchup against the Oilers, where he would have 164 total yards and a touchdown. He would miss just one game this season, and this is where his streak of 119 consecutive starts would start. He would also be elected to a Pro Bowl. In 1999, Curtis would improve even more, having 1,723 total yards, and this time only 5 touchdowns. Martin wouldn't fall under 1,400 total yards again until his final season. I won't bore you with a bunch of numbers, so we'll just bring up certain numbers. His seasons of total yards would go in order: 1,712, 1,833, 1,456, 1,570, and finally his best singular season would come now in 2004. Martin would be absolutely electric, rushing for practically 1,700 yards and adding another 250 in the air, totaling for 1,942. He would record his most yards this season and would also have his third most amount of touchdowns in a season with 14. To summarize this season in one game, let's look at his first game of the season against the Cincinnati Bengals, where he would rush for 196 yards and have 2 touchdowns. Martin was a beast. There is no denying it. He would carry the Jets to a divisional round matchup against his former team, the Patriots. The Patriots ended up winning this game, ending the Jets season and effectively ending Martin's chances at a Super Bowl, as he would retire just a season later. Speaking of the playoffs, he would record a total of 1,100 scrimmage yards in his playoff career, to go along with his 8 touchdowns. In Martin's final season, 2005, he would be solid at best. He would only break 100 rushing yards once this season, and that would come against his rival Buffalo Bills. He would show once again what he's capable of, rushing for 148 yards and just 18 rushes. His career would end shorter than anticipated when he got hurt in Week 13, which would be the last time he suited up, ending his 119-game start streak, and this would also be his only season of not having 1,000 rush yards or more, let alone not even having 1,000 total yards. While Martin did have a wonderful 11-year career and would even be elected into the Hall of Fame, I feel as if Martin goes unnoticed due to the other big names. It doesn't help that the Patriots replaced him with Corey Dillon in just a few years after he left, and to begin their dynasty, essentially, as we know today. And even the Jets, who would replace him with LaDainian Tomlinson. Martin finished his career with 14,101 rushing yards, which is 6th all-time, and finished with 17,421 all-purpose yards, which is 21st of all time. He would also finish with an even 100 touchdowns, which is tied for 23rd all-time. While I wouldn't sit here and say he's forgotten, I definitely do think he doesn't get nearly enough love. With his size and running ability, he's easily a top 10 back of all time. If only the Jets could get him to come out of retirement to play with Aaron Rodgers, maybe they have a chance of winning the Super Bowl.